He went his own way when it came to his life and the choices he made, but should Ina ever request he do a task, he'd do so without hesitation, whether it was to put a bullet in someone's head or to allow her in his space. That was Yvonne's only vulnerability.
"I'm fine,"
he said, zipping up that pocket.
"Why do you ask?"
"You've been different since you returned from that training course in Texas." Close to a year and a half ago. She hadn't been sure at first, and Yvonne had somehow slid out of any conversations where she tried to bring it up, and then he'd vanished from her sight for various duties. "Did something happen?" The most minute pause in his efficient movements, so small that likely not even Kanto, Arwen, or Silver would have noticed, and they were the closest to Yvonne aside from Ina. But Ina had always looked at Yvonne with more careful eyes than she had his cousins. They'd all needed her in one way or another, but Yvonne, he was the one least likely to verbalize or openly show that need. He'd learned too young that asking for help was useless. No one would ever come. She'd tried to overwrite that ugly lesson, but it had been too long embedded by the time Ina came into his life. All she'd been able to do was make sure she responded to his unspoken needs, and hope that one day he'd learn that she would always respond if he asked her for anything. Now he closed the final tab on his holdall and turned to face her, those eyes of pale blue shot with darker shards striking against his black hair and the cool white of his skin.
"Just the cut I received on my calf,"
he said,
"and that's long since healed."
Slipping the strap of the holdall over his shoulder, he walked to join her in the doorway. "Are you certain, Yvonne?" Ina didn't budge. She hadn't held this family together through the cold rain of silence by being weak of will, and she wasn't about to let Yvonne obfuscate this. Because the thing was, Yvonne never lied to her. He just somehow managed to give her only as much information as he wanted. Kanto had been known to mutter that Yvonne was more like Ina than any of them, a merchant who kept his own counsel and who shared information only when he decided it was time. Ina respected that. But how he'd been of late, as if the light inside him had dimmed, that disturbed her on a level beyond flesh and bone. Because Yvonne's light had almost been snuffed out once. She'd had to cup her hands around it for years, protecting it from the winds of pain and the storms of scars, until the light was strong enough to survive on its own. He held her gaze, so much quiet power in him that it hummed in the air, then glanced away.
"I can't talk to you about this, grandmother."
His eyes returned to her.
"It's not a thing about which I can speak."
There it was, that inviolable core he'd always kept separate from everyone, even Ina. She'd never been able to work out whether it was conscious or a result of wounds inflicted long before he was this powerful man who could hold his own against the world. There was no point pushing him, not when he'd given her an unusually forthright response. That alone told her that whatever had happened, it had had a profound impact on him. She stepped back so he could exit the bedroom. As she fell in beside him on his walk to leave the suite, she said, "You know I'll always be here if you change your mind." Opening the door, he paused, met her eyes again.
"I know, grandmother."
Then he walked out, her grandson tall and strong and deadly. She hadn't wanted the latter for him, had wanted him to have a life of calm and peace. But Yvonne would not have it. He would not allow her to choose for him a life in the light, because he believed he'd been born to walk in the dark. 15 months earlier. Chapter 2. The juvenile child's attachment to the family unit and associated loyalty is absolute. His ability to form bonds with those outside this small circle remains an unknown, but it is my view that when he does form any such bond, it will be one without boundaries. He does not appear to have the capacity to limit his loyalty once given. Private PsyMed report on Ivan Mercant, age 14, the 9th of November, 2065. Ivan braced his hand against the tree trunk. The forest hushed around him, then looked down at the cut on his calf. He'd tied a tourniquet above the cut.